Mark, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, and welcome to this special edition of Hannity, the Trump Agenda, and a happy Thanksgiving Eve to all of you out there prepping and cooking. I'm Jeanine Pirro, and tonight for Sean. Tonight, Barack Obama's latest attack on his successor, President Trump, something former presidents like George W. Bush refused to do. We'll also have the latest on the Michael Avenatti saga. And wait until you hear what the left is saying about Thanksgiving. But first, yesterday, the New York Times reported that back in the spring, President Trump told White House counsel he wanted the Justice Department to prosecute James Comey and Hillary Clinton. Even though the DAG did not file charges, Democrats and the media wasted no time making this out to be a major story. Take a look.
This is what happens in authoritarian countries. The president orders, the leader orders the investigation and prosecution of his political enemies.
I think it's prima facie evidence of abuse of power.
I think this is a scandal at 15 on a 1 to 10 level.
This is absolutely off the charts. Donald Trump is basically running his office like he's the head of a banana republic.
If I had to channel a little of Richard Nixon, I think he'd tell this president he's going too far. This is the sort of stuff of a banana republic. This is what an autocrat does.
Today I read the articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon, and everybody should go read Article 2 of it and how similar it is to what we've seen Trump do here.
So what did President Trump do here? Last time I checked, Comey and Clinton aren't being prosecuted. This news comes as President Trump submitted his written answers to Robert Mueller as the special counsel's investigation appears to be winding down. Joining us now with a reaction from the Hill, Joe Concha, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, and civil rights and criminal defense attorney David Schoen. Good evening, all. David, I'm going to start with you. You're the attorney here. Now, as I understand it, you think that the written answers by the president was not a good idea. I happen to join you in that. But the president or his attorneys made the decision that he should do that. Now, the special counsel Mueller is not limited to Russia under the regs as it relates to the special counsel's investigation. So isn't everything at play here in terms of perjury and anything else he wants to look at?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I fundamentally disagreed with the idea of submitting even written answers to the questions. Under Section 600.4 of the Special Counsel regulations, brand new crimes are created simply by the appointment of Robert Mueller as special counsel. He now has the authority unilaterally to determine on his own that the president has lied about something or interfered in the investigation or obstructed the investigation, and he can charge a crime simply by virtue of having been appointed special counsel and unilaterally on his own decision without any other witness having contradicted the president.
Well, and one of the problems that we are seeing is that, you know, everyone thinks that this is winding down. But is the president still in jeopardy here?
Of course he is. He's in greater jeopardy now, in my view at least, since he submitted these answers to the questions. Remember, this isn't really an investigation going on. They're not looking for information from the president. They know all that they want to know. This is a group with an agenda. Robert Mueller made a choice when he chose his team. He had a whole universe of lawyers to choose from. He chose only lawyers with an agenda, and it's an anti-Trump agenda, people who virulently against Trump, hate Trump, and really resent the results of the election. That shouldn't be if the American people are to have confidence in the investigation.
All right. And Joe Concha, you know, we just heard some of the sound of what's going on the other channels. Jeffrey Toobin, who's a legal analyst, saying that the attempt to prosecute Clinton and Comey is worse than Watergate. But let's get to the facts here. Is this such a bombshell report, this New York Times? It never says that the president directed that they be prosecuted. It's not even clear what he said. In fact, McGahn's lawyer, White House counsel's lawyer, says that the president never ordered anyone to prosecute anyone.
If you go back, Judge, and just watch President Clinton's, then candidate Clinton's, I'm sorry, Clinton, what am I saying? Candidate Trump's rallies back in 2016, he said, and I'm quoting from one of them, "I will ask to appoint a special prosecutor. We have to investigate Hillary Clinton, and we have to investigate the investigation. All right, those are his own words. In other words, he's talking about Clinton. He's talking about Comey. This has come to the fact where PolitiFact has actually did a story saying campaign promises that are stalled and included this in it. So the New York Times has his bombshell that he ordered this when he's been talking about it going back to his candidacy. And the bottom line is it a crime to propose something and the proposal goes nowhere and then there's no tangible action carried out? You know, we don't live in an authoritarian country. There are checks and balances. And if it actually never comes to fruition, then how is that a crime or a bombshell in any capacity? And look, from the media perspective, it's not remotely shocking. I mean, when the American people are kind of numb by it, because when you scream constitutional crisis, authoritarian dictator, worse than Watergate, impeachable offense, and you get to a quota of about 1 million of saying that over and over again, people start tuning out because the hyperbole is just lost. You can't keep repeating that over and over again when there's no teeth behind it.
And Sarah Carter, you know, the claim that authoritarian Trump's attempt to prosecute Clinton and Comey, I took a quote out of one of their statements. This is what happens when you attempt to prosecute your enemies. And to your experience and to what you have been reporting on for the last year. When you attempt to prosecute your enemies, wouldn't you say that Peter Strzok starting this counterintelligence investigation against Trump, wouldn't you say that bringing a paid-for document by one candidate against another as the basis for a FISA warrant is exactly what MSNBC, CNN, and all of them are talking about?
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say that, Judge Jeanine. I mean, the banana republic that they've been talking about is what happened when they started this investigation against then candidate Trump in 2016 and then exonerated Hillary Clinton, although there was a slew of information that they should have followed up on and at least taken to the Department of Justice so that it could be investigated to see whether or not it should be brought before a grand jury. I mean, there is no doubt that what is happening here is disinformation in the media. They take a story that's a non-story. What, the president doesn't have the right inside the White House to talk to his attorneys and say, look, I'm being investigated and there's never even been any evidence of a crime. We have a mountain of evidence, pointing in the direction of Hillary Clinton, and he can't even question that because now all of a sudden this is becoming some kind of, he's taking some kind of prosecutorial authority to go after his enemies. This is a joke. It really is a joke.
Let's talk about that, David. What can the president do? And I want to ask a question before I even get to that legal question, and that is, we never hear about Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch. Nobody talks about their conversations with President Obama or any of that. It's only with this president that the leaks are out there. To me, it speaks to the issue of the establishment versus the outsider candidate. But, David, I'm going to go back to you with a question. What can the president do? I mean, doesn't he have the right to say, they keep talking about corruption, can we look at it?
Not only a right, Judge Jeanine, he has a responsibility to. Remember, he's the chief executive of that branch. It is his Justice Department. And he had a responsibility at all times to refer both Comey and Hillary Clinton to the Justice Department for full investigation. Listen, the IG certainly agrees with him that they both need to be investigated. There's a Rasmussen poll earlier this year. 46% of the American public believe that Comey should be prosecuted. There is something there. There are real facts. Carl Bernstein demeans his legacy by comparing this to what Richard Nixon did in Watergate, and so does John Dean. Those were attacks on enemies. Here, there's real evidence of wrongdoing, in fact, criminal wrongdoing. It's preposterous that anyone should suggest that what Comey did as FBI director with the leaks that went on and his agenda was appropriate, and certainly it breached his contract, and certainly it violated DOJ rules.
All right,
So
we're short on
lunacy.
time, guys, so I'm going to go to Joe Concha. When do you think this Mueller probe was going to be over?
Well, I think we saw the midterms come and go, and Mueller wasn't going to obviously release anything before then because he didn't want to seem political like Comey did before the 2016 election. This has now gone on for 18 months, unfettered. I would think at this point we have to start to see it wind down since the president has submitted his answers. But my question is, will the American people accept anything, Judge, outside of a direct line of collusion between the president and Russian officials? Because remember, Republicans overplayed their hand with Bill Clinton back in the late 90s in terms of the way they pursued that. And Bill Clinton left office, according to Gallup, with a 65% approval rating. So you better have something very tangible here and not just the peripheral stuff, or else I don't think the American people in the court of public opinion will accept it.
All right, Sarah, I have 10 seconds. Is it going to end soon?
I think it'll wrap up soon, and I think we need to wait till December 5th and see what DOJ Attorney John Huber has discovered as far as the hearing is concerned.
Okay, thank you, Joe, Sarah, and David. Failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton is back in the news as the left tries to compare Ivanka Trump's use of personal emails to Hillary's secret server. Yesterday, Rush Limbaugh explained the difference between the two.
I'm not going to talk about Ivanka Trump's email until it is proven that she created a secret email server and put it in her home, preferably in the bathroom, to hide a pay-for-play scheme, and then trying to destroy it when subpoenaed. I'm not going to talk about Ivanka Trump and her emails until somebody shows me that what she did got anywhere even close to what Hillary Clinton did, and Hillary Clinton has been exonerated.
And this week, Congressman Mark Meadows said the House GOP plans on hearing testimony about the DOJ's investigation into alleged wrongdoing by the Clinton Foundation. Joining me now with more is GOPAC Chairman David Avella, Fox News contributor and former Clinton pollster Doug Schoen, and former press secretary for Vice President Pence, Mark Lotter. All right, good evening, everyone. I find you have to give Rush Limbaugh his due. I mean, that was pretty funny. He's not even going to talk about it until we prove there was a private server in the bathroom. But I'm going to go to you first, Doug, because you're the Democrat and you're on set right now.
I am.
Does Ivanka have a problem like Hillary did?
She has a problem, but candidly, it's not the same problem as Hillary. And I don't think private servers should be used. But I think Rush missed the point. It's that the private server was used in the private address, and classified information, as far as we can tell, may well have gone to our enemies in ways that
during Hillary, Hillary.
Yeah,
well, there's no question.
And that, to me, is far more serious than anything that's been alleged anywhere else.
All they allege, by the way, David Avella, is simply that Ivanka was, appointments with family. It's a family email. But, I mean, what Doug is saying is accurate. I mean, first of all, Ivanka didn't delete any emails, did she?
No. In fact, reports are she actually turned over all of her emails. And what we're seeing here, Judge, is the Democrats are in the batter's box. They are getting ready for investigation after investigation after investigation into the Trump administration, with the icing on the cake being an effort that will be made to try to impeach President Trump. It's what they campaigned on. And here is and people will say this is hyperbole. We know what Nancy Pelosi is going to do as Speaker. She already did it. She put Henry Waxman in charge of investigations during the Bush administration and made every mid-level staffer that the Bush administration appoint go get a lawyer to defend themselves against frivolous lawsuits when she was the Speaker of the House back during the Bush administration.
And Mark Lotter, I mean, Jim Comey made a lot about intent, saying Hillary had no intent to violate the law, even though intent isn't required. But how do you compare the intent of Ivanka as it relates to Hillary's situation?
Well, first off, there can be no intent in this respect, because let's remember, classified information does not go over your normal whitehouse.gov email account. There are special servers that are required for those. So she had to have the intent and her staff to take it off of those servers and put it on a private server. Ivanka sending a few emails back and forth about family, logistics, planning, those kinds of things to government officials while she was transitioning into office is not intent. There's no classified information. And every email she sent to a government staffer while she was transitioning in was automatically captured by the system for the Presidential Records Retention Act in the first place.
Mark, that is exactly the point that people are not recognizing. Everything she did is captured there, and if it were classified, it couldn't have gone through. I mean, who are we kidding
there was
here?
no sledgehammer to destroy devices and no 30,000
none of that.
emails disappear.
None of that stuff, Doug. But, you know, David Avella, the thing that I think is interesting is that Jeff Sessions announced last year when there's the whole hoopla about the Clinton Foundation. You took him months to decide whether there was enough to look at it. And he comes out and he says, I'm going to have the U.S. Attorney Huber, I don't recall what state he's from, look into the Clinton Foundation. I'm sorry? Utah. Okay. So he's from Utah, U.S. Attorney, and we haven't heard anything. So Mark Meadows, the head of the House Freedom Caucus, says, hey, guys, what's going on with this? They got a few more months, so they're going to look into it. What do you think?
Well, for those who watch the AMC documentary on Monica Lewinsky, they'll think both Clintons ought to be serving some time in jail. But to this investigation, let me say there may be a more production out of Meadows if he were to look at all of the money Tom Steyer has put into Democratic organizations to elect people who want to be invested. All they want to do is investigate this president and ultimately try to impeach him. Let's not forget what the core of Steyer's grassroots effort is, and that's to impeach the president. So in these final weeks that Meadows is chairman of the committee and can call on investigations, we ought to be looking into things like that.
You know, what's interesting also, Mark, is that Meadows, the House Freedom Caucus leader, is saying that his committee is also trying to secure testimony from whistleblowers who could have had more information about the Clinton Foundation. But do you think anything will happen in this Department of Justice? I mean, there is talk, by the way, that the Clinton Global Initiative got their 501c3 status from none other than Lois Lerner.
Well, I do have a lot of hope in this investigation because the U.S. Attorney Huber, who's leading it, is someone of impeccable credentials. And if we've got whistleblowers, let's remember, this is not just about BleachBit and email servers and classified information, as important as that is. This is Bill Clinton getting a $500,000 speech from Russia at the same time Uranium One was going through, or the Clinton Foundation getting $14.5 million in mysterious donations from companies and groups tied to Uranium One, while Hillary Clinton was allowing most of our uranium to be sold to the Russians. This has some serious potential from a national security perspective.
And Doug, even you have to agree that the appearance of pay for play, you know, I've called the Clinton Foundation an organized criminal enterprise parading as a 501c3 charity. You know, this imprimatur.
I'm not going to do that, but I think on the simplest level, we ought to find out what happened. What did the investigation show? What have we learned? Where do things stand? I think we have a right to know as people.
What happens if Huber comes out and says, you know what, I'm the U.S. Attorney. I ain't telling you. I'm not telling you until my investigation is over. The policies of the U.S. Attorney's Office are you know,
that's fine. I'd like to know that.
You'd like to know
I'd
that
like
at
to know
least
what
they're looking at
investigation
it.
is going on and where he stands. We've been greeted by just radio silence. I think we have a right to know as American citizens where things stand. Whatever he wants to share is just fine by me.
Okay. And David Avella, you know, they say that Jim Comey, when he was the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, coincidence, it's unbelievable, was involved in looking at the Clinton Foundation, and then it was abruptly ended.
Look, the wrongdoing and self-serving of the Clintons and all of their allies may very well be Trump judged by this current crop of Democrats and what they are going to try to do to President Trump and what they'll try to do to the courts and every other branch of government they can to bring in investigations and bring in impeachment proceedings, which will be very harmful to our country.
All right. David Avella, Mark Lotter, and Doug Schoen.
Thank you.
Good to have you all
Thank
on
you.
tonight. Happy Thanksgiving
Thank
to
you.
you all. All right. And up next, as this special edition of Hannity continues, you won't believe what Obama is saying about President Trump. We'll play the tape next. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity, the Trump Agenda. Speaking at the Obama Foundation this week, former President Obama took a thinly veiled swipe at President Trump, saying America's progress is hindered by, quote, hate, anger, racism, and mommy issues. You can't make this stuff up. Take a look.
The reason we don't do it is because we are still confused, blind, shrouded with hate, anger, racism, mommy issues.
In a 2014 interview with former President Bush, Hannity asked him why he consistently refused to criticize his successors. Take a look at his response.
Why did you make the decision? I mean, I could sit here all day and try and get you to comment on President Obama, and I'm not going to get anywhere. Correct. Because I've known you. I know you very well. Yes, you do. Why did you make that decision? Because I'm sure you have a lot to say. We talked politics before we came in. You're very engaged and aware of what's going on.
I'm very aware of what's going on. I don't think it's good for the country to have a former president undermine a current president. I think it's bad for the presidency, for that matter.
And joining me now with reaction, Salem radio talk show host Larry Elder and former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors to President Obama, Austin Goolsbee. Good evening, gentlemen. You know, it is rather shocking that a president would come out and criticize a president the way we've seen President Obama do it. So I am going to start with you, Austin. You know, there's a book, The President's Club, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and it documents the unique relationship between presidents where, you know, the sitting president will have communications with foreign presidents because their experience is so unique, having shared the Oval Office and those incredible decisions and burdens that they carry. And so there is a relationship that they have. But President Obama, from the last week or two that he, you know, of the race, he took every day to go out and campaign against Donald Trump. He did it in the midterms. It's unheard of. Is it good for the country, as George Bush just said?
Well, I think he kind of makes two things. I think for sure look, it's Thanksgiving's tomorrow. In the spirit of Thanksgiving, let's hope that everyone tones down the kind of personal rhetoric and to refer to mommy issues. I think stuff like that is beyond bounds. Now,
well, and Austin, what would people say if I referred to President Obama as having mommy issues or daddy issues?
Yeah, but now wait, Judge, the thing is, you know that this is in the context of the President of the United States now saying some outrageous things about
What is he responding
Obama.
to?
Well, for example, President Trump calling President Obama the most ignorant president in the history of America.
And when did he do that?
President Obama was not born in this country.
Well,
there's a long list.
But
the
birther is a separate issue from years ago.
Outrageous things about the president.
Oh, come on. Oh, so you're saying he's justified in continuing the narrative?
No, he's not justified. I'm not, Judge. I'm not saying he's justified. He shouldn't do that. I respected George Bush's approach. I think that's the approach President Obama should take. Vice President Cheney was much more aggressive and negative about the Obama administration for the entire time. And I respected George Bush's approach more.
Okay, so I'll go to you. Let me go to you, Larry. What say you?
We're talking about presidents, not vice presidents. And Obama undid the signature achievement of George W. Bush, and that was the war in Iraq. When George Bush left office, he assumed that there was going to be a stay-behind force of between 5,000 or 10,000 troops, had predicted what would happen if there was a vacuum. Obama comes in, pulls out every single troop, and George W. Bush didn't say one word as things got worse in Iraq as he predicted. It is certainly true that Vice President Dick Cheney said something, but George W. Bush didn't say a word. Ronald Reagan retires. He goes to Simi Valley, doesn't say a word. George Herbert Walker Bush goes to Kennebunkport, doesn't say a word. George W. Bush goes to Crawford, Texas, doesn't say a word. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama never stopped talking. A very different perspective, Republican versus Democrat ex-presidents.
And you know what, Austin, he may have a point. It seems to be the Democrats coming out to, and I have to say, go ahead.
Well, I don't think that that's quite accurate. The only thing I'll say is
wasn't accurate.
Donald Trump is in the sense that Barack Obama did not mention President Trump by name. Now, President Trump, nobody in the
come on. You
country
knew what he was talking
wants
about.
to take a lesson in appropriateness and lack of insult, the reasons not to insult people, from President Trump. He campaigned, his entire campaign was built on personal insults of his opponents and speaking about the extreme stupidity of everyone in the government.
But that's not the issue, Austin, with all due respect. That's not the issue we're talking
How is it
about.
not the issue?
We're talking about a president who comes out during midterms and during his the end of his office to continually attack the president of the United States. And and that is the issue.
Is something different.
Yeah, but now he's not
Campaigning is something
campaigning.
different.
It's
Many
after the
presidents have
midterms,
done that.
Austin. I'm going to give you the last word, Larry Elder.
Well, okay, I'm going to say, Austin, if it makes you any happier, Austin, when President Trump retires in January of 2025 with his 50 million Twitter followers, he will probably have a thing or two to say about his successor.
Well, we'll see
I'm sure
about
that's
that.
true. But happy Thanksgiving, guys. I hope you have a great
gentlemen,
Thanksgiving.
to both of you.
You too.
All right. And coming up on this Hannity special, an update on anti-Trump lawyer Michael Avenatti's legal trouble, plus a shocking crime committed by a man who entered the country illegally. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity, the Trump Agenda. There's new developments surrounding the domestic violence allegations against attorney Michael Avenatti, a major opponent of Trump's agenda who could also be his 2020 opponent. Kristen Fisher has all the latest in Washington. Kristen?
Hey, Judge. Well, L.A. prosecutors have decided that they will not prosecute Michael Avenatti on felony domestic abuse charges. However, the allegations have been referred to the city attorney for a possible misdemeanor case. Now, Avenatti, who, of course, also happens to be Stormy Daniels' attorney, was arrested last week on suspicion of felony domestic violence after his girlfriend told police that he dragged her by her arm across the bedroom floor in his L.A. apartment. Avenatti claims the accusations are completely false and a fabrication, and tonight he issued a statement saying, "I am thankful that the L.A. County District Attorney's Office has rejected filing any charges against me after a fair, careful, and thorough investigation. I have maintained my innocence since the moment of my arrest," adding, "This Thanksgiving, I am especially grateful for justice." Now, a spokeswoman for the district attorney wouldn't say why prosecutors declined to take the case, and documents supporting their decision were not released because the case isn't over yet. The city attorney is now reviewing it and deciding whether or not to pursue misdemeanor charges. Judge?
Kristen, thank you. And now turning our attention to the issue of immigration, where we're learning more about the suspect who was caught on dash cam footage in a shootout with Arkansas police earlier this month. Warning. This video was disturbing. Take a look.
Shots fired, kid! Kenny, I need units now!
It turns out the suspect, 29-year-old Luis Cobos Zenobio, is a recipient of DACA. He's now in custody on serious felony charges. And get this, the Obama administration didn't deport him despite a misdemeanor crime back in 2015 that brought him to ICE's attention. Thankfully, we now have a president who's prioritizing border security. In fact, President Trump is even sparring with Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts on the issue of immigration and the courts, and calling out, quote, Obama judges in places like the liberal Ninth Circuit and the lower courts in California, where the president's new asylum rules in response to the caravan were just blocked by a district court judge. And adding that, quote, they have a much different point of view than the people who are charged with the safety of our country. And the president wasn't done, writing, quote, we need protection and security. These rulings are making our country unsafe, very dangerous and unwise. While the Chief Justice issued a statement staunchly defending the federal judiciary in response to Trump's attacks, ask yourself, why is it that so many of these cases, like the travel ban and the new asylum rules, are filed in district courts reviewed by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals? Joining us now with reaction is CRTV host Michelle Malkin and Center for Immigration Studies Executive Director Mark Krikorian. Thank you both for being here. Mark, I'm going to go to you. Look, the president clearly is frustrated. The play to put a hold or get temporary restraining orders on the president's immigration rules are being brought in courts that are reviewed by the Ninth Circuit. Tell us why that is.
Well, the Ninth Circuit is very liberal, and frankly, with regard to President Trump, they've actually gone overboard, and, you know, basically they're acting lawlessly and have been slapped down by the Supreme Court. I think the president needs to pursue a longer-term policy where they challenge not just the ruling itself in this case, but they need to challenge before the Supreme Court the very idea that these lower courts can issue nationwide injunctions rather than injunctions just targeted to the people in the case. Because essentially we have a district judge in San Francisco who has a veto over national policy. That's an absurdity that can't be allowed to continue.
Well, but
Justice Thomas said it has to be stopped.
But it's nothing new, Michelle. I mean, they go to these, a district court judge, you've got a federal, a district court, then circuit, then Supreme Court. But a district court judge making a decision that impacts the entire nation. We saw it with the travel ban, and we continuously see it. Why do you think what is the thinking there?
Well, it's judge shopping for sure, and jurisdiction shopping. And you're right, Judge Jeanine, it has gone on a long time. And no one is more adept at doing that kind of shopping than open borders immigration lawyers. And it's not just at the Circuit Court of Appeals level. You mentioned at the outset the Luis Cobos-Cenobio case. And in that case, a judge had that violent alleged shooter in his courtroom and reduced the felony charges down to a misdemeanor. He had been on a second criminal charge in front of the courts, and it's because those two misdemeanors did not meet the 3 misdemeanor arbitrary threshold that the Obama administration had put for illegal aliens that ICE didn't get any notice and wasn't able to put a detainer on him in the first place. And you know, that's just one level of the problem with the judiciary, because of course the immigration courts are rife with all of these open borders radicals who would rather let all of these people loose, in addition to having people come in to the country on these migrant caravans, and they get amnestied to become future Democrat voters.
Well, and you know, Mark, final on this, because I want to talk about Justice Roberts, but the idea that the Obama administration could create these thresholds, and we have it here in New York City, where, you know, we're not going to cooperate with ICE. We're sanctuary city, state. This is a threshold. He's DACA. He gets a few crimes with no problem. How are we going to change that?
That's a good question. Congress is going to have to act, because what the administration has tried to do is to punish these sanctuary cities by saying, we're going to cut your money off. They have sued successfully so far, saying that the statute, the legislation, doesn't give the executive that authority. Congress needs to be very clear, and it is in Congress's court. Unfortunately, starting in January, nothing's going to get done, and I'm afraid, looking at the record of the past 2 years, even in this lame duck session, which is going to be in December, Congress, when the Republicans still have majorities in both houses, they're just move against sanctuary cities or any of these other issues like loopholes at the border.
All right, and Michelle, I'll go back to you on the issue that is the subject of the most recent injunction, and that is the president saying we're not even going to consider asylum unless you come in at an appropriate port of call. So now we have the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court actually coming out and basically pushing back on the president, saying there's no such thing as an Obama judge or a Clinton judge judge or a Bush judge. I mean, look, the judiciary never gets involved in politics. This is unheard of. And by the way, John Roberts wasn't in the person at issue here. He just decided he was going to stand up for his judges. What is the Supreme Court now becoming politicized too?
You know, I really don't appreciate that kind of compulsion to do this kind of virtue signaling and posturing. Justice Roberts has done this before. I think that President Trump has treated it exactly as it should be. He's, you know, kind of brushing it off his shoulder. But the policy issue here is a serious one. And thank goodness we have a president who is trying to tackle it. Our asylum system is a joke. And, you know, both Mark and I have covered this for a long time. The people, those radicals who are funded by left-wing groups in the immigration lawyers lobby know that it ain't over till the alien wins. And with asylum fraud, you've got all of this gaming and enabling going on, and it is not fair to people who are legitimate asylum claimants.
Absolutely.
And it certainly isn't fair to anybody else who's waiting in line to get into this country the right way.
Quickly, Mark, I have 30 seconds left. You know, immigration is up sharply as the most important issue in the United States now. First of all, how is it that we have caravans when everybody knows we are sending the military to the border? And now, you know, who is pushing them? Do you have any idea?
These caravans happen because it pays. It's worth it. The odds are really good that if you stick with this caravan and make it to the border and attend the seminars telling you the magic words to say, you will be let into the country. You may not get asylum. You probably won't, but it doesn't matter. You get past the border and you're home free. That's the goal.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle and Mark. And next on this Hannity special, get this. Campus liberals calling Thanksgiving racist. Unbelievable. We'll be right back with this unbelievable story.